I was going to continue a little bit where we stopped taping last time, having to do with, if you recall, the verse that we started out meditating upon. For those of you in other parts of the country, the verse upon which we were meditating, having to do with that which talk creates, talk can destroy. And we about got to the place that I was pointing out that is always in the 3D world, regardless of the fact that people do not enjoy this state of affairs, that what appears to be the opposite is just as valid. And when you get good, the opposite from what you were wired and primed up to see as being valid is, in fact, if this is possible, just a little bit more pregnant than the first girl. The opposite that I started to get to is a kind of conflicting counterpart, co-op partner of the fact that that which talk can create, talk can destroy, and that life has it arranged in such a way. And the examples that we were going through, such as talking to priests, talking to friends, undergoing professional analysis, and that those kinds of apparent problems people do not even recognize, identify in the way in which I did, that should make them suspect, if indeed, which I'm not questioning, that talk can apparently solve some problems. That life is not even wired up with ordinary people for the people to go, well, may I say to myself, wait a minute. It's simply talking about this problem. Oh, yeah, it took me 2 or 3 years, but still, if this problem that seemed to be the bane of my existence at one time, if nothing happened but me talking, that almost gives me cold chills to think about what the basis of the problem might have been to start with. Other than it being that way, where we were, if you recall, was almost to the point, where we were to the point that I'd mentioned it, that in other aspects, the opposite is true. That life does not have things arranged for people to try and destroy, change, take remedial action over, and we're talking about secondary problems, not primary problems. We're not talking about growing a new finger when it's been cut off or bringing back hearing to the deaf. We're talking about that which is normally referred to as personality, psychological problems, social problems, the problems that are unique to man above, at least at the level of consciousness. That is where the so-called problems that can be created, that can be destroyed by talk, the suggestion being what might have been their basis. And life encouraging people to do it in certain respects. Now, where we were, in certain respects, life does not encourage whatsoever man to consider that talk might change problems. Operates coevally, can operate along the same track. You've got phantom trains running to where one can be true, and all you've got to do is be able to jump from one tie to another, not out there, but internally, and to see that there's another train going in the opposite direction. And of course, there's a third one running parallel to both of those, which you can figure that out in your spare time, but it's a fact. But it has to do with, let me start as simply as possible. It's almost the same thing we've been talking about last time. But there are aspects, areas, circumstances wherein life does not want man to consider that talk might change, destroy, alter, lessen what seems to be a problem, a sticking point, a curious situation. And again, it's right at the heart of ordinary affairs, that is, there are certain respects in everyone wherein life has never given you the slightest notice, and I'm using you generically, has never given you the slightest hint that talking about you, talking about other people, talk about your dance with other people, that in certain respects it has never crossed your mind that talk might change it. But now in certain areas it certainly has. Remember, even one of the examples beyond professional psychiatric help, for instance, or seeing a priest and confessing your sins, I was pointing out that even humans that have had some estrangement in their relationship can sit down and decide that, wait a minute, let's talk this out. We simply had an unfortunate situation happen at some time in the past, and our talk got the best of us. We made some threats as we backed off from one another, and I've got to admit, I've cursed you before to myself when I heard your name mentioned. But then apparently you sit there and you said, God, I wish we hadn't done that. And the other person says, well, me too, that's silly. Us old dunces. Boy, we'll never fall for this again. Although that happens, and that is a prime example, what would appear to be just the opposite does not happen. Because that same situation, everyone has some occurrence, whether you can recall it right now or not, still lingering, friend or family member, same kind of situation, wherein if you could see it from a more manifold view, talk could go back and lessen, if not absolutely cure, the quote problem between you two, and it has never, ever, 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 ever crossed your mind to go talk about it. Of all the things you ever considered, such as taking perhaps a remedial shot at him with a .38, blackmailing him, paying somebody to go take a swipe at him, burning down his business, all kinds of neat charitable things. But out of all that spectrum, never one time has it crossed your mind to go talk to the person. That is, to use talk as some form of cure, some treatment. And ultimately, as we started out, me saying, absolutely destroy that which it creates, because anything that talk has created, it can destroy. How about examples in another area that you heard mentioned here not too long ago? In the same general area wherein life does not want men to consider that talk might destroy something that is already extant, something that seems to be part of the dynamics of a person's relationship, attitude toward themselves, their relationship to others, the general feel of life itself. That is the dance between me and everyone else. How about the example when you were encouraged to twist around talk, such as your mother saying, why don't you ever come see me? And you are wired up, you are primed up, life has already got your attitude in the example I made up, which I'm sure was applicable to no one that we know. Your attitude was, I don't want to come see you. And I pointed out, for other reasons and other areas, that if you were truly an intellectual subversive, if indeed you were in some way outside the general flow of life trying to look after your own best interest, that may or may not have anything to do immediately with life or your mother's or your dance for your mother's best interest, why would you say such a thing? Why would it not be more likely that you would say, what do I enjoy more than a good visit with you? And it doesn't mean you ever have to. You may have no intention but to say, I was about to ask you, how soon would you like a visit? How long has it been since we actually saw each other? Or even more recently, again, it apparently was under a different guise a few nights back. If you were threatening someone, why threaten? Why put you? Why do it in such a way? Because all threats, see, put the threatenor in a precarious position. It's like being a reconnoiterer. I always like to bring that up so many of you like the word. That if you're going to be able to reconnoiter in a really subversive way, you have got to be in a place where you can gain information without giving any away. That's true in this sort of stuff, and that's true out there if you were dealing with Franco. He is still dead, right? Well, anyway. No, he doesn't scare me. It is true out on the battlefield, in general external warfare. If you're going to spy, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not really going to come up with any useful information if the other side sees you. And for one thing, if they can't shoot you, they're going to make you see what they want you to see. To be able to do this, to gain information that is subversive, to gain information that is not necessary for the health of your own ordinary intellect as it now stands, you have got to be in a position to gain information without giving away your position. That is, without giving out information. And one of the ways that you get information is to continually, even verbally, putting yourself in the center of what's going on. You keep that kind of crap up, I'll kill you. Why say that? You're giving away your position. Now, jump as fast as you can again back from what may appear to be real-world external activities, if you must have that still as a springboard, if you need all 10 fingers. All the way from that back to a more metaphorical land. If this was the real life, why would you tell somebody, I'm going to kill you? Because if you said that to the wrong person, the person would then decide. Their own wiring would be such. If you did this to the wrong person, no matter what the circumstance, and you made a threat like that, there are people in the world already wired up, parts of life's body, foreign to you, that would turn around and kill you in a split second. Like, if you're going to threaten me like that, I'm not going to let you walk around. That's the same basis if you're out reconnoitering. If you're out trying to gain information and you establish your position, you holler, you're up there hiding in the bush, and you holler, don't take any offense up here. Keep up whatever you're doing because I'm up here spying fireside. So, don't stop or don't take it. It is dangerous. It's all the way from dangerous to useless, whichever you consider to be the most apprehensible to your own health. Why would you put yourself in the position of giving away information? And a little more subtle, if you recall, I suggested that there could be great benefit, believe it or not, instead of saying, I hate opera. I won't drag broccoli back into it. I assume that opera can take care of itself somewhat better than broccoli can, at least based upon my information of the size of their lobbying effort in Washington. But why say I hate opera? The suggestion I was giving as a person already wired up to say that. Why not say, I fear that opera would get its just deserts, its right recognition and appreciation from someone with the limited experience and background and knowledge I have of the field. The point being, having nothing to do with your mother, with broccoli, with this person that you're threatening to kill, with opera. It all has to do with the only thing that interests a real revolutionist. The cause, no. Hiding out, no. Me! Especially right here, not down here, that's a figure of speech. The only thing I care about is what I think, what I know. And if you get good, one of the things you know is that it is a costly, unprofitable, draining, misleading affair, no matter if it's true, to say, by God, I hate opera. And I don't care who knows it. I'll tell you right now. I hate Germans. I hate tall people. I hate thunder. I hate rain. I hate being broke. It doesn't matter what it is. The object in the sentence, of course, this gets reflected in, as you should know, ideas that you should be unprejudiced, more magnanimous, and that you shouldn't say that you hate some race or some religion or some sex or whatever. That's all still a crude reflection. It is fooling around with a wading pool, seeing a reflection of some greater, closer to a universal connection, wherein those that can see it, it's not the point of being nice to opera or to broccoli or to Germans. It's being nice to me. If I keep saying stuff like that, I can't see past it. And which that is a crude definition. That's a crude description because many of you know better. All you got to do if you are really wired up and helplessly drawn to this kind of activity is you simply know without any talk that every time you do something like that and you catch it from a certain view internally, just you, nobody else, nobody says, you shouldn't talk like that. The voice of your mother or a priest or a rabbi does not come back and says, oh, shame on you. You do it and you feel it. You can feel it in the chemistry of the brain. And don't any of you neurosurgeons write me and tell me the brain has no feeling. Boy, I hate neurosurgeons. You can feel, I think some of you have even put it this way, maybe I encouraged it at one time, but it's like a taste that you're staying around and for whatever reason it comes up and just people are talking about the weather and you just say, let's take it away from Germans and men of science and medicine. And just people are talking, you just say, somebody says, God, don't you hate this kind of rotten weather in the early fall? You go, yeah, I hate that. I hate this kind of dampness and that. Ugh. It's just normal, nobody pays any attention, but enough of you have been through this and you've told me in deeds and words that it's almost as though you'd like to rake your tongue off. And it was nothing. It was not an insult to some race or religion or anybody. It's just, I hate it when it rains. I hate this kind of weather. You are attempting to do something. You're attempting to lie in the bushes in a new area of your own intellect, and suddenly you hollered out to the very people. Now, I'm not talking to the people out there. It just seems that way, that you spoke to them. But you're hollering out to the opposition. That is the status quo. You're hollering out, hey, here I am. And every time you holler out, here I am, there you are. You're right back where it was to holler. God, I hate this kind of weather. Maybe you do. Who the hell cares? That's not the point. It's got nothing to do with the weather. And it's got nothing to do with whether they care. Well, that's enough of you know, without me belaboring that point, is you just do it and you just wish. It's one of the few times you can wish, I guess except for those of you that still get Spiegel's catalog, that you wish, God, I wish I wouldn't say crap like that. And suddenly, instead of me saying it, if somebody else jumped out of the bushes, David Hume, well, I guess that'd scare you enough. Spinoza jumped, well, all right, one of them jumps out and he says, why in the world do you hate that you said that? On what basis do you hate it? The truth is, on no basis. Now you're getting close to revolutionary activity. Because if you were forced to answer, or if you were dumb enough to answer, and they said, well, why do you say that? I could feel the vibrations from your nervous system. You were very sincere, and I heard the whole thing. All you said was, I hate this kind of weather. I mean, that is chit-chat. Why in the world are you now to yourself? I heard it. And you went, God, I wish I hadn't said that. On what basis do you wish it? None. I mean, for what reason do you wish that you wouldn't say things like that? None. What will it accomplish if you don't say it? Nothing. Well, nothing other than the fact that I won't regret I said it. There are certain ways to try and broaden out this. There are certain ways in which men, and this belies what's ordinarily conceived of as being the powers of the gods, that is, their singular bailiwick, their unique characteristic, or ability amongst other things, is what? The power to create. It seemed to be if we had to take a vote, if we were playing Jeopardy, I guess, it was the final big round, and isn't that the one with the questions and answer back? And the answer is, under religion, for the big money, creation. And it says, and the question is, what is the most important attribute of God's? Or what's the one where they vote? And you have to figure, anyway, I would suggest those still wired up to be interested in things religious, that they would vote that that is the most outstanding characteristic of a God, is his ability to create. It's fair enough out there in the ordinary world, game shows and other secondary pursuits. But I was going to suggest to you that if you look at it in a certain way, and men have never described it in this manner, they never have occasion to, as unique, as powerful and singularly, an ability is the ability to destroy. Now, even in ordinary language, men's actions deny this and what they say. Because what are we talking about? What's the news constantly? Not only through the media, but amongst people's nervous system, amongst ordinary communication. Always how things are going downhill. Nowadays it's the environment, since the Cold War seems to be over for the time being. So it's the environment. Everybody knows this by now. We've been through this enough. It's the feeling that, things are all right now, but that doesn't fool me because I know just over the mountains a goddamn hurricane waiting. We don't have hurricanes out here. Well, those other things, whatever you call them. I know it's problems. Tornado, that's it. It's either that or it's a plague of chicken poxes. That's not the plural. Well, anyway, I can't go into all that. It's that feeling that it is easy. I don't mean to confuse everybody. If you ask humans, they would consider this a very dumb question, ordinary intellect. If you said, what is the hardest thing to do, create or destroy? I mean, they'd laugh me off the game show stage. I was obviously be a full announcer. There is none. Men can destroy. If there's anything they're good at, it's destruction. Killing each other, starting wars, but only God can make a tree. But man can go cut it down. Think about it a second. That is the conventional common wisdom, and it's true enough. But think about it. Is destruction that easy? Now, it works coevally, because that old idea of only God can make a tree, but a man can cut it down. Sure, that's true. Only God can create whatever you want to. Only God can create the whole forest. But it's men that come along and knock it down and pave it over and put up condos. That's true. Only God can make this beautiful, pristine lake. But it's men that come along and pollute it and pour in chemicals and kill everything. All right. Case proven. Okay. Now between you and I. Although that's true at that level. The very thing that I started out trying to get you to consider tonight, coevally, running on an opposite track in the 3D world, is also the fact that men cannot destruct. How about such things as habits, hang-ups, habitual, hubristic hopes? or the irrepressible desire to alliterate. Back to the main course. You all surely followed that all ordinary intelligence would tell you that there is no contest. It's not even open to any further. It doesn't deserve any debate, any pondering on your part to say, what is the hardest thing for man to do, for mankind to do, create or destroy? I mean, it's not even a decent question. Obviously, create. In fact, most people say it's impossible. And in destruction, it's almost impossible not to destroy. Is that true? Destruction is not an art. Can men destroy? They can certainly cut down a tree. I know all that. But can men destroy? Can you destroy what you are? Can ordinary people destroy what they think? If so, how is it that there's billion-dollar businesses going on that you go pay somebody to help you, and they can't promise, but to help you try and change? I'd like to destroy my smoking habit. I'd like to destroy me eating 4 pounds of sugar every day. I would like to destroy my habit of having a fifth and a half of gin for breakfast. Will you help me destroy this? Will you help me destroy this relationship that I have that's driving me crazy? I'm attracted to the same kind of man or woman over and over and over. And I understand that you are a marriage counselor. You're a professional health person. And I understand for only $200 an hour, you will talk to me and counsel me how I can destroy this perverse, this unprofitable, this self-destructive attraction I have to these kinds of relationships. Yes, I can. Have a seat. Give me a check, please. Do you guarantee results? No. That's why I'm known as a professional. That's the difference between being educated and being trained. But the difference between a professional and a technician. Us professionals, doctors, attorneys, priests, you cannot guarantee your services. All you do is you exercise the best state of the art that is prevalent at your time and place. That is why it's called a practice of medicine, a practice of law. That it is an art. It is a science. We cannot guarantee it. And the person, does that make everybody who goes to see a priest or an attorney or a CPA, does it make them go, you mean you're not going to guarantee it? Well, I just described to you the difference between a professional. I went to school for 10 years. 10 years to be a doctor. Wait a minute. I got a brother-in-law that finished 8th grade, and he's got a TV shop down there, and he'll guarantee that when he fixes your TV, he'll guarantee it for 60 days. Well, you just said it, sir. The man's got a 6th grade education. Professionals do not guarantee results. They guarantee the exercise, the highest professional standards exercise of their art, of their calling. And it took you 10 years to get to the point to charge me $200 an hour and not guarantee what goes on, the results. You know, this is not an attack on the professions. What I'm getting to is this. Do you, this good old question again, do you read and hear every now on the news that hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of professionals are attacked in their office daily at such times when somebody sits there and pours out their problem medically, legally, religiously, spiritually, and it gets through and the person says, all right, $200 an hour, whatever the fee is, I'll operate on you, it'll be $4,000. And then I'll be cured. Well, now wait. Or then my problem will be solved. No, wait. We don't guarantee results. Do you then hear about people stand up and go, what? You were about to charge me $4,500 for a damn phony baloney operation and then you won't guarantee it? Or are you going to charge me $200 an hour and tell me it'd probably take at least 60 hours worth of legal work, just research, to get me into court, and you're going to have that kind of bill and you don't guarantee any results? You know, Hubert, where's my gun? Do you hear about that? The destruction of problems, destruction in life is not as simple as men would have it if you just simply presume the question about, if you start off, what is the easiest to do for men, to create or to destroy? And they just, it's not a question. If you say, well, all right, okay, since you say it's destruction is it, and you can't even really create, if it's destruction, then I'm asking this, is it easy to destroy? Or is it easy, difficult, or of medium effort to destroy? They would still almost laugh. They say, well, it's easy. It's almost impossible not to destroy. You know, those that are really concerned about such matters as a fell into corporate rituals like the real aesthetic, real orthodox, falling under the umbrella of Hinduism, for instance. You know, wearing masks so that you do not destroy microscopic creatures, so that you try not to destroy inhaling them and killing them, which the mask is not going to stop. The only way you can stop killing creatures is to kill you. But it's that kind of crude reflection of how easy it is, men would say, if presented with a question in that straightforward of a manner, of how easy it is to destroy. I present to you again the possibility that destruction is not all that easy. It's not all that easy at all. And yet men, as always, are led to believe that in certain respects, destruction is almost a word away. Wherein in other areas, not only is destruction perhaps very difficult, in other areas, men are wired up in such a way that they never think about. Well, I should just tell him or her this. If I just said this, the problem would go away. Enough of you laugh, and some of you on tape I hear, it takes a while to get here from other. But when I'll point out something such as, if you apparently have had this long-running conflict between you and a parent, and the verbal basis, what seems to be the trigger is she says, well, at least you call, but why don't you ever come see me? Your sister always comes see me. The neighbor's kids always come. You never come see me. And then you start into, oh my God. In other words, you start into your ordinary dance. You start into the ordinary interchange of energy, which is quite proper. Nothing wrong with it out there in life. But we're assuming that you find it to be less than profitable. That when it happens, you feel like that your circuits, you wish, instead of this time just your tongue, you wish you could get down into your full wiring circuits of your nervous system and take like a little squeegee or a pipe cleaner, and you wish you could wipe them all off like, ooh, I wish I wouldn't do that. Not that I wish my mother wouldn't. Of course, ordinary people say, I wish you wouldn't do that. The conversation was pretty good up to that point. You know, I said hello, and she said hello. And then she says, why don't you come see me? And then it started, and I felt like, ooh. And then I'll point out the possibility that a person might, for some reason, when he said, why don't you come see me? You go, I'd love to see you. Jesus Christ. Oh, when will you be home next? When will you be home? When's the next big holiday? I think about it all the time. And of course, ordinary people, we've been through this enough. They might want to say, well, Jesus, you can't lie to people like that. You know, even if you felt better, it would be what? You said the other night. The placebo effect. I mean, you lied to the poor woman and made her happy. Yeah. A terrible thing. A terrible thing to do. I lied about opera. Instead of saying I hated it, I kind of shifted the blame. Instead of saying, I hate opera. I hate weather like this. Instead of having opera go limping off and going, you know, whatever do to him, I said, hey, I shifted around to where it was like, I'd love to come hear you. I'd love to, you know. Okay, I'd love to come hear you. I was about to exempt Wagner, but I've taken enough cheap shots at that beautiful family. Instead of saying, I hate opera, you said, as per my example recently, you would say, I feel as though, instead of picking on opera, I fear, I know, I just know, that opera would not get its proper reception, its proper reaction. It would not get the proper energy flow from someone like me with my limited experience in it. In other words, you have not bruised opera. As silly as this sounds, opera could be left with its dignity. Opera could even feel better. Whereas the first example, there was another voice hollering, opera, ooh, I hate opera. Think how opera feels. Think how your mother, when your mother says, why don't you come see me? You go, well, for one reason, because you drive me nuts with all these kind of questions. So your mother feels bad. But instead of you saying, I hate opera, you go, what you're saying in essence is, I would love to go hear the opera, but right now I cannot bring the proper respect and understanding and appreciation to it that it deserves, and so rather than be offensive to opera, I will withdraw for a bit. I'll withhold my attendance until I can more properly blah, blah, blah. You're in essence saying that to your mother. Why don't you ever come see me? Oh, I was thinking the same thing. When's the last time I have been there? There's nothing I would like more. Ordinary intelligence could call both of those some kind of lies. They could say it's useless. They could at the very least say, well, that's just silly, which would put all of us in our place, which it is. Except for the fact that it works miracles for a few people. Not miracles that you're suddenly a part of some group, some cult, and suddenly you grow an extra digit or lose one. No reason for it. Except when you do it, you got no feeling that, boy, I wish I could go back and not do that. Boy, I wish I could wipe my circuits clean. Boy, I wish I could wipe my tongue off. All of that is bye-bye. On the surface, it apparently is just being some sort of decent person. But it's way beyond decency, because it has nothing to do with the relationship with the other person. Because to be decent, to be Christian, with a small c, to be really charitable, to be really humane, you could say, well, that's the way you would treat each other. That's the way humans should treat each other. But then it's always a comma there, because it's under certain conditions, because you can only be decent to a certain segment of humanity. You can only be reasonable, etc. And you've got to consider, well, why would I spend the effort? Maybe I should take a little more time to be decent and caring to my mother, but why strangers? Or why people who hate me? Which, that's an old theological problem, as they call it. But for somebody truly subversive, it's not a problem. Because what seems to be the triggering device, or what seems to be the interchange of energy out there, whether it's something as abstract and non-existent as an entity as opera, or whether it is your mother, it's irrelevant. Or the weather. It's irrelevant to say, well, I hate my mother. I hate weather. I hate the way the weather calls me up and says, why don't you ever come see me? I hate it all. You see, it doesn't matter. I hate it. Broccoli will call up and say, would you like me to sing the opening parts to Siegfried? No, I don't hear it. I hate Wagner. See, oh, it doesn't matter whether it's opera, your mother, the weather, or broccoli. What matters is, to a few people, is I shouldn't have done that. I should not have given away my position, because giving away my position reinforces the position. I stay there. Plus, I always feel like, whereas if you do not give away your position, you never feel that way. You never have any sort of regrets. It's just it's beyond the pale of any possibility. When you're in a new neural building site, there is no way you ever regret not giving your position away. Never, ever. I don't personally give guarantees, but I know somebody that does. And so I'll pass it along to you. You never tell your mother or your vegetable friends or any of the arts wherein people wear horns on their head and sing in a loud voice. If any time that you apparently do not bruise them in any way, that you at the very least keep your hands off, but just a little past that is make them feel better. It's for opera to leave, and it was prepared to be offended, because not only you were about to say you hated it, they could hear it coming, but of course you would never come see it. But now you're still not ever going to come see it the same way as your mother perhaps. Except opera left feeling as though the only reason you're not going to come see it is you feel unworthy. To do such as that, may I remind you of the word metaphor? I got to look that up. May I remind you that you will never, ever, 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 this guy guarantees, I'll pass it along, will you ever regret, I wish I hadn't said it. I wish I just went ahead and said, opera, I hate opera. Never, ever. It's up to ordinary humanity, and you, if you're going to stay there, to regret what you said. Not theologically, not psychologically. Of course, it gets explained that way in words, but it's just that jingle, kind of itchy feeling in your nervous system, and all it is I wish I had not been part of that energy interchange. There was I guess it's still being batted around, but it was a fairly ancient, was the basis. I'm not going to really quote any of the belief systems, but I'll extract this from a cross-section, because you can find it in all religions and all philosophies of an older time, wherein they seem to be tied to some sort of belief system, having something to do with how men should behave and etc. At any rate, it has been a continuing theme that I'll just take responsibility for putting some other words, but it's in the wiring system of humanity is the point. It's not in some way important or significant because it has been manifested in external cultural, spiritual milieus of some kind. What can you say about an overture, even if you hated opera, and the overture is such that you didn't know what the overture was about? That was by way of any of you who thought, well, if that's the preface to whatever he's going to say, I don't want to hear what's coming up. All right, it's not all that complicated. There has been a continuing rise in the nervous system, and therefore the cultural aspects of humanity throughout time, that there is like 3 great temptations to man. And that's assuming when they come out in these cultural, corporate myths and establishments that men are striving to do better. That the establishment, the belief system, believes that it is addressing the better part of humanity, or the better part of all of humanity's nervous system. Those who will hearken. I know people just don't hearken like they used to, but that's another story. I think it has to do partly with the fact that I was going to tell you something about Tom McCann's shoes, but that's really getting too far afield. It seemed to be 3 great temptations that seemed to plague men's souls, that seemed to want to distract men from doing that which might improve their condition, might make them better people. And I was going to put it to you this way. The 3 temptations, I'll just cover all of history and bring it right up to date, is desire, fulfillment, and regret. That's what it comes down to. Whether it be in spiritual, which I'll admit to has mainly been in what appears to be spiritual guys in the West, and when it was not of the West sees other areas which I was throwing in as belief systems, they see them as actually being religious. Well, such as placing at one time, it may be more merited now, but at one time you could have said, even from a 3-dimensional view, that the Western mind had superimposed the cloak of religion on Buddhism, for instance. But all that's irrelevant. I'm just wanting you to see that it circles the globe, whether it be called religious at any particular time or not, but that there are like spirits, demons, psychological entrapments, and it's like desire, fulfillment, and then regret, which also, if you would like a little more subversive aside, does anybody see that related to the apparent ordinary 3-dimensional run of time of future, present, past? Desire, which is something not had. Fulfillment, which is right now. And then regret. Sometime past. A few minutes, few hours. At any rate, back to the main road. If you can see that, and in the spiritual, if you still lack any real feel of why I brought it up, and the spiritual / more psychological realm of using such descriptions, it is that things tempt man. And you don't have to take it just spiritually by any means, but things tempt man. Not just the mortal sins and the deadly sins, but a man is tempted to embezzle from his firm. A man is tempted to try and engage in some kind of price-fixing conspiracy with some of his erstwhile or otherwise competitors and do something that would rob the public till, defraud people. That there are these temptations in life. That is the desire for something. The desire for extramarital sex. The desire for unwarranted profits. And, of course, back in the good old days, the desire to just get down and sin. Just to do naughty things. All right, there are these desires in life, whether they be spiritually, whether being couched in spiritual terms or psychological or humane, economic, political terms. It's there. So you've got the desire, then you've got the fulfillment, that men are very inclined, even decent men with education, men with breeding, get in a powerful position in the corporate structure, in the political arena. And they are tempted to start cutting corners, to take little monies here and there, to try and benefit from their position. They're tempted, and even the best of men has been proven by recent events in the political arena of our part of the world and all other parts, that even the best of men are inclined to fulfill this desire. Well, all right, give me that. Yeah, all right, I'll do it. But then it's always regret. or it's very likely that that's going to be the third part of this scenario. They get caught, or even the more humane, the more decent of them, just later, their conscience begins to get them. I should not have done that. I knew it when the desire arose. I knew I shouldn't, but now I regret it. So you have the full spectrum, the desire, the fulfillment, and then the regret. Now, I was going to ask you, is it possible that you could profitably see that what seems to be the ordinary affairs of man at the secondary level could be driven by a dichotomous motor that would be known as like desire/dread? All you need is a two-pole motor to operate, as all of you know, AC current on a 3D planet. It's not everything. Desire/dread. I just cut down the 3 for you, but I wanted to start with a 3 because that seemed to actually serve a full course. The 3 major movements of symphonies. The pleasantness of first act, second act, the middle. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. Man is tempted, man yields to temptation and loses his soul almost, but then man regrets it and gains his soul and his self-respect back. But look at it this way. If that full 3-act play was in everyone's, not on your Broadway, at least on your off-Broadway intellectual site, then there would be a satisfactory culmination of all of the faux pas you've taken in life. And is there? No, certainly not. So if you narrow it down and look at it, that all activities are driven by this motor that is desire/dread, would, as all of you like to say at times when you do that little Greek chorus bit that you like to do, wouldn't that explain a lot? No? All right. Here it comes. An example of this motor called desire, let's call it /dread. It's the same thing. It's one dynamic. Now I'll give you, instead of the dynamic itself, an example. I want to eat / I dread being fed. Secondary. I want to dine, but I'm talking about secondary. Not eat to stay alive, because if you're eating to stay alive, you would be outside the dynamic of this motor. Because if you're starving to death, and you're clutching, crawling across the sands, holding on the piece of shipwrecked debris you have, and you haven't eaten in days, and suddenly you're washed up on an island, and you look, and sure enough there's food, but it turns out, wouldn't you know it, it's a chocolate sundae. And you were trying to watch your calories. Well, I guess I'm safe in saying that some of you sense a certain kind of humor, if not ludicrousness, in that. But when you're not talking about primary affairs, that is, you are not eating because to stay alive, you're dining. Or that you're not engaged in the act of sex to procreate, whether you intended to or not. That is, you were just actually engaged in sex because, what do the medical science call it? You had the extreme hornies, enough that you were just uncontrollable. And the foreplay amounted to, like that. At any rate, what I want you to hear is, when you eat at the primary level, or when you're engaged in sex at the primary level, etc., you are not part of the dynamic of desire and dread. Because no one has ever eaten to stay alive and then went, oh, I wish I hadn't eaten that. And no one has ever engaged in sex down to the mute, which of course what I meant by the joke of the foreplay, down to, if you could do it anymore, just engage in sex and it was down as much as possible back to the primary level. People do not engage in such sex as that and then get through and go, ooh, I wish I hadn't done that. You just have to trust me if you don't hear the validity. Never, ever, ever. It does not happen. But conversely, if you want to look at it another way, if any of you want any hint of what kind of sex life you've had, perhaps, do that on your own free time. At any rate, can you see that in the secondary affairs of man, hobbies people want to do, maybe your hobby is clothes, which, like all hobbies, like all secondary affairs, spring from a primary need of life. But let's say that your desire is clothes, or you collect stamps. And we're talking about now, this great engine of desire/dread. I've got to have that dress. Or I've got to have that new suit. I've got to have a new car. This stamp is now on the market. And you buy it. And you can almost count on this. You know it. That somewhere along the way, might be a few hours, the next day, you wish you hadn't done it. It's the dread part. The time comes to pay the continual payments on the car. Or you spent the money that your partner thought you shouldn't spend on that kind of wearing apparel. And you did it anyway. And you went out that big night, and there it is, another guy's wearing the same dress. And boy, and then your woman says, I told you not to waste your money on that. And don't just say, well, wait a minute, those examples, I only dread it because somebody else made me dread it, made me feel guilty. Oh, come on, folks, come on. Look through here. If it is being driven by that motor, that dynamic of desire/dread, there is no way out. You're going to pay some kind of price. It's got nothing to do with morals, got nothing to do with spirituality, got nothing to do with anything you ever thought about before. If it did, you would have already thought about it before, and you wouldn't be doing it, and therefore you wouldn't be laughing. There would be nothing funny about it. Well, then I was going to ask if you could see that there is, I'll assume we're running out of time, so I'm just going ahead and say, rhetorically, I'll assume that all of you see that in secondary affairs, you can go and check it yourself, as always, and find if there is any exception to secondary affairs, anything outside those kind of activities, that if the human organism, you and Toto in some way could be split up in a pristine, in a clear way, and cut you down to absolutely primary activities just to keep you alive, and those that you could get by without, which is no longer a valid description, but it is operational here for a second. If you look at the areas that you would just say, all right, that's got to be what he means by secondary, because I could get along without buying a new wardrobe every year. I could get along without buying a new car. I could get along without worrying about going out to eat every night or worry about where I go to eat. I could get, yeah, I know what you mean. I could get by with that. Those areas are driven, or look for an exemption, they're driven by a kind of motor that I'm describing to you as the desire/dread. Whereas, if that doesn't seem to open your eyes to anything, at least look at the areas that would then be left that would be primary are not driven by such a motor. That is, you can find no place, go ahead and look, no example, wherein you dread what you did at the primary level. If you did, if you want this to a real aside, if you did, you're suicidal. If you want to look at it that way, that people commit suicide, you could say do. You can look at it as parts of your own body that self-destruct. You can look at it as cells passing away that you're through with. You can look at it as a healing process taking about metaphorically in your own body. Because if you did truly, if you were sane by every other standard, reasonable in the middle of life's bell curve, and you dreaded something that you had done that was a primary activity, you would have committed suicide. Now back to where I was going, back to, again, Jesus, to the main course. If you can see on your own that there is great validity and almost no exception to the fact that primary activities can be seen as being driven by a dynamic of desire/dread, then I wanted to ask you this. Could you perhaps see that there is a kind of unrecognized tug-of-war going on continually right now, and it increases almost minute by minute, a kind of tug-of-war that results in the modern dance of humanity that is not much more than a struggle between the forces of the primary and secondary activities? Would that not be a way to synonymously refer to my dynamic, the first one, of desire and dread, instead of desire/dread, how about primary/secondary? But the ordinary intellect could say, well, wait a minute, all secondary activities I don't dread because I have hobbies that are not necessary to keep me alive, but I enjoy them. Right? Weren't you listening a few minutes ago? No offense to hobbies. But there always seems to be a downside to everything that you do at the secondary level. There will come a day that you've got to pay off the guitar. There comes a day that you finally face up to the fact that I have spent, best of my reckoning, about 27 years of my life fooling around with this novel and I have now had the final, as far as I know, publisher in the Western world is laughed in my face again. Secondary activities are driven by a dichotomous machine. They are driven by dichotomous desire. They are driven by the binary AC activities of occurring at the 3D level. They do not go in a straight line. If they do, they're primary. Either that or suicidal. That you have spent 27 years, and not just to get a final turn down from a publisher, but you and that novel are going as fast as possible. Evidently you're operating a pretty slow tempo, but you and that novel are going as fast as possible head first into an embankment. Because if it was down to the level of being exempt from any dichotomous, any ambiguous feeling, it is then primary, which is not, or it's suicidal, which it may be. Well, we got a few minutes. How about a complete change of subject? This is one that almost got thrown in with. Remember a few tapings back that we were going through sort of a flea market attic sale. But here's one, since everyone loves to hear a little bit about science, especially down to the simple level at which we discuss it. That ever popular area, or at least growing in popularity in many quarters of entropy, being the inclination, at least here on this level, is described toward disorder. It's taken as an absolute fact as well as any scientific theorem is. It's observable to all educated people so interested throughout the universe as far as the little eye can see through microscope and telescope. The mechanical, the automatic, the near irrepressible inclination towards disorder. Now everyone think about that a second. You've all read and heard about it. Ponder that, and then ponder that there are people here and there who attempt, for their own reason, which is no reason whatsoever, attempt to impose a kind of willful, though futile, neatness. Before I have sufficient inclination to perhaps say anything further about this that might be of any specific use, consider out there in the great ordinary world, the externally known historical world. In those kind of ordinary historic classifications of humanity into the social stratas, upper, lower classes. Oh, I know some of you people still think there's a middle class. Note, and if you can't think back about history enough, just think about the movies you've seen that Hollywood said was historical. The upper classes mechanically seem driven to try and impose neatness in their palaces, in their homes, in their businesses. That the higher up a man becomes in a firm, or the higher he is to start with, you go in, his desk is very neat if not clean. You go into palaces. And since you can't, just go back and watch the next good Errol Flynn movie that comes on to get a good view of some of the good French palaces before the Revolution. And you look around and things are always neat. There can be a very busy room somewhere, the king's little antechamber, and it can be super busy. I mean, more crap than you could look at. You know, in several years, just everywhere, kind of little junky things he picked up somewhere. But if you look, they're always real neat. You do not look down and see, crumpled McDonald's wrappers on the floor. You don't see that somebody pulled the wrapper off the mail or a crumpled up envelope. The upper classes, as they're called, have mechanically been driven to apparently try and impose some kind of order on the world. Whereas when you get down to the so-called lower classes, good rednecks, people do not even try. It's as though it never occurred to them. And this has got no comment to you people out there that may be seeing this for the first few times. Nothing to do with any sort of social commentary. I'm just using hard, material examples to reflect something else. These are crude examples. But notice, when you get into just what ordinary people, not me, I'm just taking their descriptions, what is known as the lower classes, it's as though it never even crossed their mind. And I'm not saying yet that one is preferable, because the natural inclination, that which is taken as being a scientific reality which is beyond the human will from ordinary views, is for disorder to increase, that disorder will eventually triumph. And it's always nibbling at your heels. That's why I said that a few people, which I may not have time to even get into, willfully here and there, though futilely, ultimately futilely, try and impose some order, some neatness, for no reason. But I want you to see that even in the mechanical world, that there's already two camps. And if you tried to ask King Louis, I don't guess he'd talk to you, but one of his underlings, why do you people, have you ever heard of entropy yet? And they say, oh no, and you tell them what it is. And you say, why do you keep trying to keep everything real neat here? Because dust will take over, paintings will rot, tapestries will finally mildew. Who knows, tomorrow the masses might get all excited and come up here and throw you guys out. And you see how they live. They're not going to keep it neat. In other words, you're wasting your time. And they might say, well, yeah, but that's the way Louis wants it. It just seems to be the way things should be here in a palace. But if you go out there in the hovels or the trailer parks that they used to have in France before the Revolution, where they cleaned them up, and everybody should know, don't take it personally, but you must have some relatives, or maybe you just went, you know somebody got a relative living in a trailer park, lives in those kind of, you go there and, or watch it on TV. I know that you don't have any occasion ever, and they'll go into the ghetto areas, the slums, or the major cities throughout the world, and the reporters will say, and they'll even do a zoom close-up, rats in the middle of the day, just sitting out there on the floor eating, and just toilets overrunning. Nobody seems to care. And you said, how could humans live like this? And the people are sitting there eating dinner. They're like, so you could say that one group is naturally already living closer to the ultimate triumph, the reality of disorder. And yet mechanically, a smaller group, although smaller in size but much more powerful in other ways, seem just mechanically. They don't debate it. You can't imagine the Rockefellers sitting around, or the Mellons, or the Rothschilds saying, we sure do spend a lot on having all these, as much money as we got. We still spend a lot of, how many maids have we got here just in this one house? How many butlers? How many people are cleaning? Go to hell with it. It's going to get dirty anyway. Let it go. And I was out in some of these trailer parks, some of the people that work for me over in the vineyards, I've seen how they live. Hell, they live as long as we do. What does it matter? And yet they seem helpless, that they try and impose some. We're out of time, and I will assume that I might pick it back up next time. Is then, besides those two mechanical camps, is that there are a few people, which of course then I may hint to you there might be some benefit therein personally, for no reason, of attempting to impose some willful, though futile, neatness on top of all this. But until then, be cool.